And now joining me live is the government spokesperson today, Grant Robertson. Hello, Minister. Who is the first person on your list of people to hug from Thursday? Minister, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sorry, Lisa.
Fantastic. Great to have you with us.
Issues there.
So from Thursday, you're allowed to hug people. Who's the first person on your list?
Oh, I'm looking forward to hugging my grandchildren, actually, who I haven't seen apart from on Zoom, for 7, 8 weeks now. So that'll be very, very high up my list if I can get some time off this weekend.
I'm sure a lot of people will be relieved, but there's a bunch of questions they'll also have. School, so that's back from next week. Let's start there. What's it going to look like? Will different levels go on different days, or can you give us a bit of a taste?
No, as far as I'm aware, and obviously these are matters that the Ministry of Education and schools are working on together, but as far as I'm aware, schools are organising themselves to create effectively the kinds of classroom-type bubbles that have been discussed before, making sure that they use the playground space and so on to facilitate that. But those are matters that the schools can work through and are indeed working through with the Ministry of Education. The changes announced today, the easiest way of answering your question, Lisa, don't affect the arrangements that schools have been working on.
You have differentiated between bars and restaurants. So restaurants can open this week, bars not until later. What's going to be the penalty for bars who maybe buck the rules?
So as the Prime Minister said at her press conference just before, what we've done where we've encountered issues like that over the last few weeks is that they've been closed if they're in that situation. It's our intention that the enforcement would be there. There's quite an important distinction to make here is that we did this in line with the hospitality industry, and most hospitality people are familiar with the rules that exist around Easter and Anzac Day and so on, which means that as long as you're there to eat and dine, then you can actually have a drink with it. That is the primary purpose of most restaurants. Pubs now look a bit like that too. What we're trying to avoid is really the situation that you probably have seen reported, Lisa, in South Korea, where they were one of the very first countries in the world to open up bars. Someone was infected. It spread like wildfire. We think you've got good mitigations in place to be able to manage that with our 3 S's. So the fact that people have to be seated, separated and served by a single server. But we thought we'd just give ourselves one more week to be able to get all the level 3 information in and build ourselves up to that.
How is it that we can play rugby at close quarters, but you can't sit next to someone in a bar and have a drink?
Well, it's all to do with controlled and uncontrolled environments, and I actually think, most of the sporting codes that we've been talking to will not be starting up community-level sport in the next 2 weeks anyway, because, they want to get themselves and their clubs in the right place. When it comes to professional sport, we're very much treating those as workplaces, and we've even had WorkSafe New Zealand involved with those professional sporting codes, the netball and the rugby, to make sure that they're organised. So we're treating them quite differently in terms of other activities.
So, Minister, it's not that they're safer, it's just that you're, using semantics, you're saying that because that's professional, that's a workplace.
Well, no, it is, because it's a controlled environment, and that's the really significant difference here for those clubs who are professional, is that they are in a position where they can very closely manage and monitor who's there, what they're doing, how they're acting. And in fact, there's been weeks' worth of work with both Netball New Zealand and Rugby New Zealand to create safe environments for them to be in. Just the same as somebody else going to a work site where there are far more than 10 people there.
So with the magic number being 10, for example, if you want a party at your house or a dinner party, or you're at a funeral, stag do, etc., how are you going to police that?
Well, look, very much in the same way that it has been in levels 4 and level 3. And I do think as we move down to a situation where we're getting far more freedom back in our lives, that also means that as individuals we've got to take more responsibility. So quite clearly, the police will continue to do the job that they've been doing, but they're not going to be knocking on your door if you're having a dinner party. That's up to you. And I think most people want to lock in the gains that we've made. They'll make sure that they stick by the rules. Where there's obvious and flagrant breaches of the rules, just like the police have been doing up to now, that's when they'll step in.
But you did lose a few of the people from the team of 5 million over the weekend, didn't you? I mean, you only just had to go out for a walk to see that there were people who were already bucking the rules. Doesn't that worry you?
Oh, look, yeah, I think that can get a little bit overstated. I think one of the things that happened was we've been quite used to there not being very many people around, and as we move into level 3, people were getting more freedom, and as we move into level 2, they'll be getting even more. Of course, there is the odd person who breaks the rules, but actually, I think by and large, most New Zealanders have done an incredible job of sticking to the rules and had to make huge sacrifices. Now we've got significantly more freedoms back. We've got a lot of the economy operating. But as the Prime Minister said earlier today, some of our social activities are still limited to make sure that we get on top of this virus once and for all. And I would also point out, these are now very similar rules to Australia. They're only allowing 10 people as well as they move forward. And so I think, we're doing the right thing here. The economy's up and running again. Our social lives are a little bit more restricted. But as you said at the start, we've all got people we're looking forward to giving a hug, and that's now possible.
At level 2, what kind of health demand are you anticipating? Some people may have stayed away from services, and apart from that, there was some medical specialties estimate 20,000 operations cancelled. So what's your modelling telling you about demand for health services at level 2?
Well, it is likely to tick up. I don't have specific modelling on that, but you would have heard the Director-General of Health say just about every second day to people, please do go in to fulfil the appointments that you've got. If you're feeling unwell, go to your GP. So we have been encouraging people to do that. But no doubt, as life frees up a bit, we will see a bit more there. We're acutely aware of the issues that have occurred for DHBs around making sure that they had to suspend some surgeries, and we're working closely with them on how we might.
How long to clear that backlog, do you think?
Oh, look, it'll be a considerable amount of time. I don't want to sugarcoat that because, of course, there are...
months or years?
Well, I would have thought months. There are already scheduled surgeries clearly for now. So what will be required is how we can increase some capacity to make sure that more surgeries can be done to make up for that backlog, and we're working with DHBs on that as we speak.
Do you expect to clear that backlog by the end of the year?
I don't have a specific date like that in mind, but we are working very closely with the DHBs to clear it as quickly as we can.
The Prime Minister talked about the reproduction rate for this virus, so how many people it spreads to. We're at 0.4% at the moment. At what level would we have to increase restrictions again, go upwards in the levels?
So as Ashley Bloomfield said today, it's always a mix of factors that help decide whether we're coming down or whether we're going up. It's not the fact that we might get a particular number of cases even. It's simply about the nature of those, how it's spreading and so on. Being under 1 is the standard everybody wants, because clearly once you're under 1, you're getting to the point that less than a person is having it transmitted to them, if that makes sense, even in statistics, even if not in reality. So we clearly want to keep it down as low as we possibly can, but it's not a single factor. And I know that's been hard for everyone to be able to grab a hold of, because you want single data points to make decisions with. But one of the reasons Cabinet's worked very hard at each of these decisions is to weigh up a range of health factors, community transmission, number of cases, ability of the health system to cope, and now also economic and social factors. So it isn't one single thing. Clearly 0.4 is a very good level when you look around the world at a 2.5 kind of rate that you've seen in a lot of other countries. So we've just got to keep it down there.
Minister, I see in the Cabinet documents that you were released on Friday, it said for every positive case, international evidence suggests that there are 9 undetected cases. If that's the case, we would have about, 13,500 cases in New Zealand. How worried are you about that?
Yeah, look, I think there's been a lot of evolution of the advice and the science, and my recollection of that particular number was from a little while back when people were looking at some of the early exponential growth and modelling off that. I'd want to go back and see what the updated version of that number is. Having said that, it would, the idea of silent transmission is something that still concerns the epidemiologists, and it's one of the reasons why we slowly step our way down the levels rather than leap back to what was normal life.
So at level 2, people can get out and about. They can start spending again. They can go to the shops. They can go to cafes and restaurants. So are you going to put some cash in their hands this Thursday so they can do that?
Oh, look, I'll leave Thursday's announcements to Thursday.
Give us a taster.
We've already put We've already put a significant amount of money into the hands of New Zealanders via the wage subsidy scheme and via the other supports that are in place. As I've said a few times, and I said in my speech last week, as we open up the economy more, that gives more businesses the chance to stand on their own 2 feet, be able to trade, and that will flow through the rest of the economy. We're equally acutely aware that even at level 2, there are some businesses and some sectors that are far from normal, and so
can we expect the subsidy scheme to be extended but to be more targeted?
You'll just have to wait till Thursday, Lisa.
Oh, come on. People were desperate to know this. They're hanging on, some of them, not knowing if they can survive. Can you just let them know about this?
I'm certainly clear that there will be more support in the budget to help businesses and households get through.
Got to go, but are you excited about getting out of the Prime Minister's bubble?
It's been a pleasure working with the Prime Minister over the last 7 or 8 weeks, but I think both of us would acknowledge it's time to see other people.
Also, while I've been talking to you, we're getting a lot of feedback on this bar issue. Josh has got in touch from Dunedin. He's not the only one. He says he's confused about these guidelines effectively trying to make us into restaurants in a controlled environment. The call is far too nuanced, and I am deeply disappointed after weeks of patience and supporting the government at every step of the way. What do you say to Josh and other bar owners who are in this situation?
Look, I think we've designed these rules with the Hospitality Association, and they are based on the rules about trading around Anzac Day over Easter. So they are familiar to operators.
Even though it could sink them this extra week?
Oh, look, I would just encourage people who are in that situation to hang on. I know they're all desperate to get back in and get trading. A lot of pubs, restaurants will be going. And one more week, is something that we've all got to do to be able to keep ourselves safe. But also, as I've said before, the budget will continue to provide support for businesses and households.
Thanks, Minister. Appreciate your time. That is Grant Robertson, who is the government spokesperson today.